This is my evidence of learning for core activity 4.1 in H808, and I just thought I might talk a little bit about the process of reflection and how that impacts upon what the formal submissions that we have to make, I suppose. So I suppose I'm going to take the TMA 01 part 1 and the process that I went through there to highlight that. There's just a word about that first. I mean, we didn't actually form any formal small group. We were supposed to do groups of 3 and 4, but there were several people involved, and maybe if nothing else, there was certainly support and perhaps some inspiration involved from the others. Now, there was a comment in the forum about the digital possibilities and how things never seem to be finished. Okay, it was actually my comment, and how I said to someone that there just seemed to be a never-ending range of things that we can do before saying this is complete. And I find that I just have all of these artifacts and inspiration mind maps and Word documents that are always sitting there ready to be worked on. They're never done. And Trevor rightly said that wasn't it always the way in academia, that people constantly rework and tweak and so on. And I'd agree with him, but I suppose I just want to point out that the quantity of information that's available to us is overwhelming, particularly so if you're fresh back to academia after a break. Things have changed, and I think the speed at the speed in which things have changed is extremely fast, and particularly so in our context as budding technologists. I mean, this is a field that does not stay still. So that means there are new skills required in sifting and arranging and editing and sharing and selecting and so on. So what I suppose the point I was trying to get across was that in the past, academia involved more going to a library, finding a book. A book would have to be peer-reviewed, and it might not see publication for a couple of years. It's then in print for many, many years, whereas now that just doesn't happen. I mean, back then the fastest movers I found were articles in journals, and again, those would go through, I mean, the fastest something would be published in a journal would be some months, whereas now something can be published straight away. And often we're looking at not so much published, well documented and evidenced things, but we're actually looking at the things themselves. So we're looking at, well, how is that project working? How does that piece of software work? How does this social networking impact upon the way people relate? So I suppose there are these new skills involved in sifting through, wading through this digital soup, if you like. So I thought maybe I'd talk about the process that I went through in writing the essay in TMA 01. And first of all, I began with finding the recommended material. So that was easy enough. Just click on a few links and download a few PDFs and maybe print them off. Maybe jumped around a bit through the hyperlinks that were in some of those documents, and very furtively lurking in the discussion forums. And then I found that it kind of, every now and again, a little morsel of information would jump out at me. Maybe it's particularly relevant to my job, or I'm just interested in it anyway. And then I'd start kind of reading around that a little bit more, and then reflecting on how that fit in overall. And I found one of the things I like about this course, is that it allows you to see how the content of the course relates to your own workplace or vice versa. So maybe I was seeing things related to accessibility and disability, and seeing how that could be applied in the overall context of e-portfolios and reflection. So I then start maybe sharing some of these minor little discoveries and very tentatively, and then looking at how other people had responded to that, and maybe getting a bit of confidence from that, and maybe engaging in activities with some of these strange disembodied characters over the net. So I suppose all of that is what Moon was calling chewing the cud, or was it mental housekeeping she called it? So just trying to kind of make sense and kind of this absorption of all this data and trying to relate it back to the knowledge that we already have. So just for fun, let me show you how I put together the text. I mean, I started off with an inspiration mind map, and maybe some of you are familiar with inspiration, but basically it allows you to use colors and shapes and links to represent ideas, and then you can edit that before converting it to a linear text. Now I found I'd start off with maybe an article by someone like Moon and try to dissect it and represent that, and then kind of add in notes and hyperlinks and bring in other documents and see how they relate it. But it just very quickly becomes a big, unfeasible, unmanageable mess. So I then, when I was just tried to filter that down a bit and moved over to a web-based application called co-mapping, which is a bit more sober, but I find it's a good balance between the visual and the textual that I find it more easy to work with. Finally then moving towards the linear text, where you use language to carefully describe the relationships, complex relationships between the ideas, making sure your references are in there, trying to choose the correct words to get across, and yet be economical, because we only had 1,500 words. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could take advantage of this e-portfolio and just submit the inspiration diagram? That might be nice, because sometimes colours and maybe the choice of different fonts or images or so on could better represent, or at least clearly represent, some of the concepts that I'm trying to explain. Whereas, you know, what is it, a picture paints 1,000 words. Well, that'd be 1.5 pictures, then we get this assignment done. So anyway, to go back to what Trevor was saying in the discussion, and I think that there's a lot of responsibility actually that goes into to guiding students or learners when they're starting off in this area. We, on our part, we have to learn very quickly, I think. I mean, traditional academia was a much slower place, as I was saying. This is really fast moving. If you don't know how to use a wiki, you know, who do you turn to? I mean, there are lots of academics out there who have no idea what a wiki is. It's almost like the cutting edge people are training us, but the edge hasn't yet been defined, or it keeps moving. I don't know, am I making any sense? So anyway, so skills that we certainly need, but we also need the scaffolding that much of that literature around reflection and e-portfolios talk about. So I don't know, so where are we going? I mean, it's a hugely exciting process. I mean, I'm exhausted, but it's very, very exciting. I feel I'm learning a lot. I feel I'm getting better understanding of the process that's involved. I took far too much for granted at the outset and was being very cavalier about allowing time to do these things, and I thought I could just maybe get away with the minimum, but I've found it's far more about process than it is about output, even though of course output is hugely important. But I'm looking forward to a day when, you know, instead of submitting a draft of something by email as I have done, or by hand, you know, in the future maybe lecturers or correctors will get a little signal on their iPhone. They have an RSS feed that says, yes, the student has submitted something for review, and they can download it there and then onto their PDA or their phone and send it back. So maybe in the age of ubiquitous computing, this is the way forward, and probably we're going to be ahead of the curve in terms of having gone through the whole process of learning about learning and then representing that digitally. We're probably going to be ahead. So that's a nice optimistic note to end on, I think, and that's the end of my first vodcast, or digital artifact of evidence. Good luck with the assessment. Bye!